Hello, everybody. All right, so if you weren't here for the last stream or didn't watch the last stream, the last thing that we did was build out this template for this sort of purchase receipt slash thank you page. So what I want to do today is actually make this real. So this is just a template with a bunch of kind of static data. So if we look at like the purchases show blade, where are you? Purchases show. No. What's Sublime doing here? Resources, views, purchases, show. Yeah, okay. So yeah. So basically what I want to do is figure out what we need to do to make as much of this data kind of real as possible and move it into like an actual controller with an actual endpoint and stuff like that. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the database so we can kind of get a reminder of how some stuff looks. And think about what the first thing that we want to be able to do is. Everyone keeps talking to me about the less framework. One day I will maybe open source it when I am either comfortable supporting it or feel like it's done. But yeah. Okay, so we have this purchases show route. It's full of static data like the product name and the author. All that stuff is just kind of hard coded in here just to help us have some data to work with as we're kind of building this out. So what I'm going to do is write a test and figure out what we even want to test here. So I'm going to head into the feature test folder for now. So we have this purchasing products test, which is for actually going ahead and purchase the product. And this is the screen that you're going to get redirected to after that's done. But I think what we're going to do for this one is create a new test file, something, maybe something like a view purchase test, because that's kind of what I'm thinking of this page as being. This is kind of like your purchase, which contains information about the receipt, some whatever links to do stuff, and most importantly, the ability to go ahead and get redirected to where you're supposed to go. So let's add a test case and a test and take a look at some of the other tests here to kind of get a reminder of how things need to be set up. So I think we're going to need to create a product and create a purchase and a user. So let's start by building all that stuff up in the test, even if it's a little bit more verbose than necessary, and then think about maybe extracting a factory helper, kind of like I did here. So something I do a lot in tests is rather than using like Laravel's factory stuff directly, I often create these little helper methods that are more like contextual based on the actual stuff that I'm trying to test. So in this case, creating a product means I need a user, I need a Stripe account connected for that user, and I need to create a product itself, right? And I need to make sure that the Stripe account information is not associated with the product. So I do a little bit of massaging usually to allow me to kind of specify an array of data that I want to use to create the seed stuff for this test, even though these are the only two pieces of data related to the product, and this is actually related to the Stripe account for the user. But because I use that for some assertions, it's nice to be able to specify it. So anyways, back to the view purchase test. So let's do something like can view purchase information. Oftentimes I start with these really generic test names and then move on to more specific test names when I start writing out the other cases, and I'll often come back and rename the first test once I realize like what's interesting about that one. I am using Elixir for this. Yeah, I've had this project kind of kicking around since before Mix was really stable, and there was a couple things that it didn't support originally that I needed. Like when I first made this project, I had Bootstrap in the back end because I forced myself not to write any CSS there, but I was using my own CSS for the checkout form. So I had a bunch of Sass and some less, and Mix didn't support having Sass and less in the same project originally. I think all of those things have been worked out now, but I still haven't gotten around to swapping that over. So let's think about what we want to assert first and kind of work backwards. So I don't really love making assertions about HTML content, but I can't think of a better alternative in this case yet. So let's start with that and then think about what we want to do moving forward. So I think the most important things are kind of to make sure we can see like the product information to start, and then maybe where we should be getting redirected to. So, okay, let's say this, or we'll have a response, and we're going to do something like assert C, and we're going to make up some product name. I'm not going to use Heroicons because I want to force us to generalize this, so I'm going to try and use data that's different than all of the fake data here. So why don't we use like test-driven Laravel as an example. And maybe we'll have like a link to like course.testdrivenlaravel.com or let's say example.com / KiteTail redirect or something. That's going to be like the imaginary thing that came back from the webhook. Now this is making me realize some things that I'm not sure if we are currently tracking, which is when someone purchases something, we probably need to store the redirect that was returned so that the customer can re-access that in case it's unique per customer. So that's something that we're going to figure out as we go. Yes, I'm going to release new test-driven Laravel stuff this week. If you are a test-driven Laravel customer, then all of that less framework stuff, at least like a version of it, is in that course. If you look in like the resources folder for the repository, I'm using the same less framework for the Ticket Beast app as I'm using for KiteTail. I've made a bunch of changes for KiteTail, but it's all based off of the same thing. Okay, so we're going to assert that we see the product name. We're going to assert that we have that redirect link, and maybe the product author. So let's just start from here. So those are the assertions that we want to make. What is the act phase? It's going to be something like the response equals this, and then this is going to be a GET request to the route is going to be like a purchases show route. So we'll start with probably for now, it's kind of interesting. I don't want to use just like the auto incrementing ID because then it makes it like easily discoverable, because this should be like a private URL that you can only see if you're the one who purchased the thing. So we'll figure it out. Figure it out as we go. So we'll use a named route. So we'll go to purchases.show and pass through some purchase that we've made. And then we can use like route model binding to decide what the field should be that's put in the URL for a purchase, which I think we'll probably use like some sort of really long random string or something. Yeah, UUIDs are a good solution. The solution that I've landed on that I use a lot, well, not that I use a lot, but that I landed on recently that I'm going to use going forward is using that hash IDs library in combination with an auto-incrementing ID and then storing that. So not treating it as like something I can encode and decode, but it's nice because it's guaranteed to be unique and you can still keep them like kind of short. Not that they really should be short in cases like this, but it's cool for doing those like YouTube style IDs and stuff like that. Okay, so we're going to make a GET request to the purchases show route. And before we do that, we need to make sure that we have a purchase. So we can say purchase equals factory purchase class create. And there's going to be some stuff there, but we don't know what yet. One of those things is going to be the redirect URL, or what should we call that? So when someone buys something, there's a webhook request that gets sent back to some endpoint that's specified in the product. So you can see here's like the webhook URL. So this is the endpoint that should get hit whenever someone purchases one of these products. That's going to return back a URL, which is where the customer should get redirected to. So I think a purchase should have a redirect URL. That sounds reasonable. And in this case, we'll make it this here, so we can kind of see like the symmetry between this value and this value. And this is going to need to have a product ID, I think. Purchases, product ID. And that'll be the ID of some product, which we don't have yet. But I think that's the only data we need to specify so far. We're probably going to want to specify the amounts and everything since we want to do the receipt data too. So continuing to work backwards, this product is the next thing that we need to create. So product equals factory products class create. Oh. And we're going to put the product name. So what is that column called? Name test driven Laravel. Okay, and then the last thing that we need is the user who owns the product. Let's say user equals factory user class create. And before we go ahead and do that, make sure we put in this foreign key here. So we want to specify the user's name, I think, is the only thing that actually matters here. Okay, so we'll say the name. Is that what I have it called? Yep, name is me. Cool. So now the first thing that we do is run this and see what the hell happens, which will be some chaos, I'm sure. A fatal error, test case not found. Okay, so I need to update my test snippet, I think, because Laravel namespace is everything now, right? So all my snippets are out of date. That's a bummer. And probably use that database migration straight, actually. Whoops. Okay, let's run this again. Contains one abstract method. That's the wrong test case. That's why. Tests test case. The working backwards thing is something that I picked up when I was rereading Test-Driven Development by Kemp Beck. He talked about how he likes to write his assertions first, then whatever would get him to those assertions, and then figure out what setup is needed to do that act phase. So it's just something I've been trying recently, just to kind of see how it feels. And I think I kind of like it so far. It's kind of cool to be able to like start by saying, okay, what is the outcome that I want to have? Define that, and then figure out, okay, well, what do I need? What do I want to be able to do that gives me that outcome? And then what do I need before I can do that thing? So just kind of an interesting experiment to see how it goes. All right, I'm able to locate factory with the name user. So now we're going to import a bunch of Eloquent classes. Run this again. All right. General error, table purchases has no column named redirect URL. Okay, so let's go to the create purchases table migration. And thankfully this app isn't actually in production yet, so we can still go ahead and change some stuff. So let's add a redirect URL here. And I think if we don't make it nullable, some other things are going to fail. I'm going to prove that by running the purchase products test with that not set to nullable. So we get a bunch of errors because not null constraint failed redirect URL. So let's make that nullable. And then let's make a to-do. These ones are all done from a previous stream to say, remember to save the redirect URL with the purchase when purchases are created. So that we remember to go back and update the existing purchasing tests and purchasing flow so that we can eventually make this not nullable. Although it'll probably still remain nullable because certain product types won't have that. Okay, integrity constraint violation. Not null constraint failed purchases amount. So I bet we don't have a model factory for purchases. We do, but it's trying to be clever in some way. So let's look at this again. Integrity constraint failed. So these values are the amount, subtotal. Seems kind of weird to me that that's not working. Let's go in here and just dump product price for a second. Just kind of see what's happening. So that's coming through as null. So which product are we getting, I wonder? Hopefully it's the product that we created in the test. Otherwise this fancy factory stuff I'm trying to do is not working properly. So the price is null for this product, which is interesting. So that means that our... Oh, because products don't need to have anything set. So I have this thing with products where they can be like in draft mode, right? So I think what we actually want to do is just use this factory state to pre-fill a bunch of data for us. So states published. Unable to locate state published for app product. Publishable. The purchases don't relate to the user because the users are actually the sellers on KiteTail, the people selling products. People who buy, like customers, don't ever have accounts, at least not yet. They're just kind of anonymous. Okay, so let's see. Failed asserting that thanks bro contains test-driven Laravel. So if you look at... So I must have already driven at this controller at some point, so I didn't forget. And actually, I remember doing that. So let's go to route web. And down here, we should have a purchases controller show. So just to kind of make this more TDD-ish, we get an error that there's no purchases show route. So now we're back to that. If we go back to the purchases controller... Purchase controller. Let's go ahead and run it again. We should get an error. There's no show method. Okay, so we know that we're in the right place. And then this is going to return nothing for now. We're on the test. I do have a streaming schedule. I stream every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern and every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern. If you go to building.kitetail.co, there's a bunch of schedule information there. So let's return the purchases.show template for now. And now we get like this big gross HTML with nothing useful in it that doesn't match any of the stuff here. Okay, so we're getting closer. So the reason that we got this error that it doesn't contain test-driven Laravel is because, of course, it doesn't contain test-driven Laravel. So we could fake this and hard code that in, but instead, let's think, okay, well, how could we get test-driven Laravel? Well, we should probably get it from either the product name Or we could have a accessor on the purchase to get the product name, which I think I actually like better. So if we had something like purchase product name, I still don't have a convention for this. You know how with Eloquent you can do like computed properties like this? I struggle sometimes in deciding whether or not to create these computed properties for things that have to go and fetch things that maybe might trigger a lazy loaded relationship or things like that. So lately I've been doing this sort of method getters without a get at the beginning because I hate that, to kind of indicate the difference between just a plain old attribute and something that might be expensive to compute. And I'm almost considering making this like my standard way to get all data from an Eloquent model, even to the point where I don't access columns on the Eloquent model directly. So like a purchase might have a customer email or whatever, right? Like if you look at purchase, it's got email. Instead of just doing this, I'm considering doing something like this and writing that method explicitly. So I have a little bit more insulation against change there. But anyways, let's go ahead and run this, and we're going to get an error that there is no purchase variable. Let's go back to the controller and make sure that we pass through a purchase. Ooh. Purchase. And this is going to fail again because we still don't have a variable, but now it's going to be in the controller. So now we have to think how we want to get the purchase variable. So purchase is going to be equal to purchase, find or fail, and then I guess like ID for now. And let's add it to do use some sort of long unique ID for purchase slugs. But let's just get it passing using like a sort of a naive ID based approach for now. So we'll take the ID here and let's run it again and see what happens. There is no purchase. So let's import that. Whoops. And now we get a called undefined method product name. So there's no product name method on the purchase yet. So two options here with TDD. We could either let that error guide us to adding that method to the purchase class, or we could write a unit test for that method on the purchase class. I haven't even been writing unit tests on this app, purely feature tests, because in 99% of cases, and in all cases so far in this app, all unit tests would have just been redundant coverage. They can still be beneficial, but the feature tests are usually my source of truth for whether or not things are working. And they give me the greatest flexibility to refactor things. So I think I'm not going to create a new unit test for purchase and just allow this feature test to give me permission to add this method that we're talking about here, this product name method. Can't use implicit binding because unfortunately that relies on a type hint, and type hints are not allowed in this code base. So let's go to the purchase class. Purchase. I cannot ever hit the C before the H in purchase. Okay, so actually there is a get product name attribute. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? I wonder where in here I use that. In the... I have this index view for listing all of a customer's purchases. And I don't think that even has tests because that's back from the prototype days. That whole code, all that code needs to get deleted, to be honest with you. But I'm going to go ahead and tweak that. Just so I don't find myself confused later. Okay. So instead of a get product name attribute, let's just call this product name. And it can still return the same value it was before. I think that'll still be fine. Okay, so now we're failing to see Adam Wathen in there. So we're going to do the same thing where this is coming from. So let's add another helper to the purchase. And this is an interesting one because I got to kind of pick some ubiquitous language for what I want to call the people who sell things on KiteTail. Like it could be something like author, or it could be like seller or creator. Let's look and see if I actually already have anything like that in here. So I have get user attribute. So why don't we just do something like, author is not always right. Purchase. Products creator name. Man, that's kind of a gross method, but that's okay. We can refactor that later if we want to. So let's stick that under here. Merchant. I like merchant. Good suggestion. Who made that suggestion? Cody. All right. I like it. I love it, actually. Okay, let's go with merchant name. And before we do that, let's run the test again to give us permission to write a merchant name method. Return this user name. Okay, moving on. Now we have this KiteTail redirect. So that should be a pretty straightforward one too. If we head down here, here's actually another interesting one. So this is one of those things that I find to be an interesting discussion when it comes to testing just views, like stuff that's just displaying data and trying to drive that out with TDD. I can't think of like any sane test that you would write to prove that you have this text, because this text isn't really that important, like what it is specifically, like what the sentence is. But it is important that this part doesn't show the wrong product name, right? So I can't really think of a good way to force us to change this with a test. So just an interesting piece of information, I guess. Not everything should be driven out with a test, especially not stuff that's just at this kind of view layer that's kind of using whatever API you've provided to the template to display whatever information you want. I think what's important is that that things like this work, but in the templates, feeling free to just use those things now that you trust that they're tested, and coming up with whatever way makes the most sense to give you some confidence that the route that returns this template is at least working in some reasonable way. So let's do a little search on this page, see if there's any more heroicons going on. No, there's not. Okay. So back to our test. The theme that I'm using is the material theme, but it's slightly different. I'll see if I can color scheme. Select color scheme. So if you look, here's like the regular material theme, which is very similar to mine, but you'll see like this is red. For some reason that drove me nuts. Same way like these parameters were red. So I made a version that's custom that is here, material theme custom. And all I did was take everything that was red and make it white. So to me, it's a slightly nicer looking for PHP. Where were we? Okay, we updated this part to show the right products, and now we want to make sure that this actually links to the right redirect thing. So let's just stick that in here. We'll say purchase redirect URL. And it's green. Amazing. So that doesn't mean we're necessarily done. And I think we want to change this text too, honestly. Because in the case of a webhook product, like this one, so this is Heroicons. This is a downloadable thing, right? You download a zip of stuff. This type of product doesn't even exist in KiteTail yet. Right now, I'm just working on the webhook style products. So download files isn't the right call to action for this. So I think what I'm going to use is something like, me and Steve talked about this the other day, but I think we landed on something like continue to purchase, which is still not great. I can't look at it here, but it just kind of says like, yeah, continue on to your purchase. And maybe we throw like a right arrow next to that or something. So let's try and look at one of these purchases just to kind of see. If we go to purchases, 1. Yeah. So the stuff that we did test is here, like the product name, the author name, and this link does seem to actually doesn't work because that's coming back as null. But that's fine. So we'll have to update the seeder to save that stuff. But anyways, in the meantime, let's see if we can drive out this kind of receipt section. This generate a detailed invoice thing is just going to be a link to a totally different screen that we have not built yet. And same with like the Facebook and Twitter stuff. I'm not going to worry too much about that yet. So the receipt stuff. Let's update our tests for that. Yeah, continue to purchase is not perfect. Continue to product, I'm unsure about too, because I'm worried that it sounds like you're going back to the page to like buy the product. It's almost like you want to have something like access your purchase or like get your stuff. You know what I mean? It might ultimately be best to make it customizable because I think it's going to be hard to generalize. But I don't have any better ideas yet. So if anybody wants to keep thinking on that, if you have any better ideas for what a kind of general message that you could put there that takes you to like the thing that you bought, I would love any input. So test-driven Laravel, we want to see if we're going to show the purchase method. I guess we're going to have to make that work. So let's say this person bought it with MasterCard. So we fail to see the text MasterCard. Go back here, find where it says Visa, replace that with something like purchase, maybe like a payment method column, and we'll have to make sure that we save that when we create the purchase. Still comes back as null. So if we made this a method, we could get like a better error. But because it's just using Laravel's magic methods, we're not going to see an error that property doesn't exist. That's okay. We know that it doesn't exist. So the way to make that exist is to update the test. So let's say purchase method is MasterCard. Access product isn't bad either. Yeah. No purchase method column. Back to the purchases table. So we're storing a bunch of stuff here. Let's stick it here, maybe. Purchase method as a string. And add a to-do. Save purchase method when purchases are created. We might have to do that for some other fields too. Like I don't think we're storing the last 4 card digits either. But we'll get there. Okay, doesn't contain MasterCard. Still interesting. So I think that's because our model factory is maybe not great. No? Let's look at our purchases controller. Troubleshooting. Why don't you contain MasterCard? You do contain MasterCard. Did I spell purchase method wrong? This is very possible. Payment method. Okay, this should be payment method. Let's update this column again. Runner again. We got a DD still. Whoops. Green. Okay. Next thing. Do we want to see... Nothing there because that's not getting seeded. The amount. So let's verify that we can see some amount. So we can say that the purchase amount, which I think is its own column, it defaults to the product price, but let's just put like a specific price in here for now. Let's say 5,900 cents. So let's assert that we see $1.59. It's not perfect, but it'll do. So here where we have that $69, I think there's an amount in dollars attribute already. So let's use that. Amount in dollars. Green. Next one. I'm going to use Cashier to handle the billing stuff for customers probably, or for users of the app that are paying a subscription. But I do not know 100% for sure yet. I might not be able to because I might be charging a different amount every month based on that person's usage that month, whereas Cashier is like a fixed thing every month. So I'd have to run my own cron to change that person's plan every month, which means I might be better off just writing my own subscription logic. But we'll see. I would like to support different currencies, but to start, I will just support freedom dollars, even though I don't even live in a country where we use them. Okay, so that shows the price with the cents, which I guess is fine. I mean, that's a design detail more than anything. So why don't we assert that we see 59.00 for now. And yeah. Interesting thing, if I wanted to assert that we just saw 59 with no .00 at the end, I think the only way I could do it would be to actually write two assertions. Is there an assert don't see? I hate when they use like shortened words when you can't put an apostrophe in there. It always looks so stupid to me. So like this would fail because it does contain 5,900. So that's $59 with the cents. So that's one way that you could do that. Anyways, next thing is the last four digits of the card. So let's say that we wanted to see the last four digits of the card, which are maybe 9876 or something. Something that's reasonable. So we'll call this card last four. And we'll store 9876 there. Gonna fail, I assume, because there is no card last four column. So let's add another to do. Save card last four when purchases are created. And here we'll store that. Yeah, you could add a space, but it might not be perfect because I think, like, in this case, I don't actually have a space here anyways. You'd get like the angle bracket, and putting that in the assertion feels super gross to me, so I wouldn't want to do that because I would want it to pass whether I had it set up like this or like this. You know what I mean? I really hate it when tests fail for really like superficial reasons. Okay, so we're not seeing 9876. So let's go up here. We'll stick the card last four there. Something I'm wondering, not every credit card is the same format. They're not always like 44444. Like American Express is like 45 something. Kind of curious what other sites do if they use the right mask depending on the card number. Kind of a interesting detail to look for. Okay, so that's good now. And the last piece of data is the date of the purchase. Yep, I will check my email about that. Yeah, I'll get back to you. And if it's not there, message me on Twitter or something so I can find you somehow. Because I don't think I had an email about it from before the stream. So unless you sent it recently, it might have gone to spam or something. Yeah, I can't store all the credit card info or we'd be in big trouble. Stripe won't even give it to you anyways. Okay, where were we? We wanted to get the date. So let's verify that we can see that, I guess. So let's say that this was purchased on my birthday last year. And this year. So this is going to fail. We'll have to override created at here. Created at carbon parse 2017-03-15, and we'll make up a random time of day to make sure that that's not included, like 7:30 p.m., something like that. Okay, sounds good regarding that email. That's good, so I should have it then. Okay, so we don't see the date, so let's think about how we want to do it. So here, I think what would be cool is to do something like purchase date. Like you could just use created at and format it. But let's call this like, I think I have like some helpers with like the word formatted in them on some things. Products. No. User. No. Formatted. Date. Where's that? Oh, not my code. I've done it in other things. Do we want to make a new method, or do we just want to go like created at format FJ Y or whatever? Maybe let's get it passing this way first. And I don't know that that's the right mask for sure, or the right format string. But we can find out, I guess, can't we? Excellent. Excellent. Cool. Yeah, that's the new Sublime icon. This cool one here. So, is there anything else on this page that we care about changing? The only other thing that I've considered, which I haven't really made a decision on yet, is showing like the right theme color, because each product has a theme color, which you can see in the database. So it's optional, but you can override the colors to kind of make the checkout experience a little bit more branded. But I don't know if I really want to write a test for that. That feels like just a templating thing to me. So maybe the next thing to look at would be updating the current purchase flow to make sure that we're saving some of this other information, because that's not something that we're currently doing. So let's make a commit first. Let's look here and make sure there's nothing that doesn't seem like something that should be in this piece of work. All seems reasonable enough. One other to-do I want to make. Move customer purchase routes to a different controller than seller purchase routes. Right now I have in the purchases controller, there's this index view which lists all of the purchases for you as a seller. So every single person who's bought something from you, it gets listed there. And then this shows an individual purchase, but this is meant for an end user, and this is meant for like an admin user. So I feel like they should be in different namespaces and completely different controllers. Anyways, let's commit this with the fancy GitHub app here. So we'll say replace sample data in thank you page with real data. Something like that. Type in the webhooks. I do not think that can be done. Raise that with the W3C or whoever's in charge of the HTTP spec. The internet is unsafe, very dangerous. You will get hacked. Okay, let's look at remember to save the redirect URL with the purchase when purchases are created. So let's look at the purchasing products test. So purchasing a product with no sales tax, that's the right one. So this is going to return this fulfillment URL. Maybe fulfillment URL would have been a better name for that column. Anyways, let's copy that and make sure that purchase redirect URL is equal to what comes back from the webhook thing. And this is going to totally blow up. Not null constraint payment method. So we're going to have to make a bunch of this stuff nullable as a stopgap to stop getting the wrong type of errors. Okay, fail certainly a null matches fulfillment URL. So I think it's in checkout complete where we create the purchase. Interesting. So we create the purchase, but the redirect URL has not been fetched yet because we haven't hit the webhook by the time that we actually save the purchase, which is probably smart because that server might return an error and we won't be able to get the redirect URL. Logical. So the redirect URL is nullable, which I think it should be allowed to be nullable. And if we go to purchase, there's a fulfill method, which goes ahead and delivers the webhook and then returns confirmation. So I think we should update the purchase and get the redirect URL from the response. So for now, I think we can just go response redirect URL because I think confirmation doesn't even care about it. So this isn't even very loosey-goosey here. But that's fine. I don't know. I like Sublime. It's fine. It's fast. I am used to it. I've been using it for a long time. I use it to write multiple languages. I use it to write blog posts. I don't know. I just like it. It's fun. I'm not really that picky about what other people use. I'm not going to say Sublime is better. I'm positive that PHP Storm has lots of useful features that I don't get in Sublime. But I just find that it doesn't slow me down, and I'm happy using Sublime, so it's all good. So that passes now, so that's pretty sweet. Let's run the whole suite. Error, 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 error. Undefined index redirect URL. I find that kind of bizarre. Oh, I was running the wrong tests. Okay, undefined index redirect URL. So let's dump the response here. See what this even is. We need to close a bunch of this crap so we can see better. URL, not redirect URL. Fair enough. Now, one thing I actually want to check is if I go to my checkout form, am I using the same? Where's the redirect happening? Yeah, it's just URL. Okay, That's fine then. That's not a test. Run this file. So this is undefined index redirect URL still, purchase 57. Oh yeah, wrong way. Wrong change. Good thing I have tests. Okay, green. Whole file. Green. Yeah. Where's iTerm? Whole suite. Green. Okay, cool. So let's add another commit. Okay. Save, redirect, fulfillment, URL when fulfilling webhook purchase. Okay, so that one's done. Save purchase method when purchases are created. So that one's more interesting. I have no idea what we're going to do for that. Let's think. So right now I have no way to get the test credit card type. So if we look at our fake credit card gateway, I construct it with charges and tokens. Here I say generate a valid test token. So that does a little tap-a-roo. We create a new payment token, passing in some valid token params. What are the valid token params? Okay. So that's like a Stripe token. So let's go ahead and look at the Stripe docs quick. And I'm going to do this in an incognito window because Stripe always puts their keys in the documentation. I did tweet when I went live. Oh, sorry. I tweeted when I was about to start. I said I'd be starting in a few minutes. I forgot to tweet when I actually went live. You're right. My apologies. Stripe API documentation. Okay. So let's look at what a token looks like. Or what is this even? Yeah, that's a token. Okay, so the token object. Okay, brand. So we want to get a brand. So we want to be able to get some overrides here. So say I pass in a brand here of MasterCard. And I say token equals, and we dump that token quickly. That's not what I wanted. Anyways, we'll figure it out. So we're just going to pass it in a brand of MasterCard and hope that all the overrides work and that we can see things work the way that we want to. So we're saving the charge ID and all that stuff. I think based on the fact that the table is in a certain order, we'll do it here. So we'll say payment method. We'll say MasterCard. Fail asserting that null matches expected MasterCard. Very fair. So now we can go back to that checkout class and look at the complete method. So completing a checkout is what creates the purchase. So down here, I'm going to just dump this charge and find out what this charge even is, and then just run the test and see what we have. So the charge is an array with 3 things in it. I feel like this should be a real class, but let's go look. So credit card gateway, charge. Let's open the fake one, charge. So, yeah, I'm going to want to update my tests for the actual credit card gateway too. So let's make a to-do. Update credit card gateway tests to make sure brand and card last 4 are returned. For now, we'll just do it here. Charges equals ID amount, destination accounts. I'll call it payment method because we control this charge object anyways. I guess I'm going to have to retrieve this token. Retrieve token. Okay, so that gives us the token. We do have the brand in there. So to start, we could just do this and get the brand off of that. We're probably going to want to put this in a stupid, ugly variable. Okay, what do we got now? Can I use object type app payment token as an array? Okay, that's fine. So there's a payment token object here. And we need to add payment token. I guess we'll call it brand. Run the tests. Okay, so it's getting closer. We do have a DD hanging out somewhere to eliminate. So this should still fail, I think. So now in checkout here, we can make sure that we say payment method is equal to charge payment method. And we're green. Okay, so store payment method when creating purchases. So before I forget, let's update the actual credit card gateway. So let's look at the tests for that. Here in integration tests, I've got credit card gateway test. And we can retrieve token details. Retrieving token details too. I wonder why this exists. I think this is an example of how to not write a useful test. Okay, so I have to try and remember how this stuff works. So we want to be able to get the brand back, right? So let's do MasterCard token brand. And this is a US test card. So that's actually going to be Visa. So let's just see what we get here. This test is going to be long because it talks to Stripe. That actually worked. It's fascinating. Okay. The charge, on the other hand, we're going to need to write a test for. So test. Oh man, do I not have tests for the charge method on the credit card gateway? I guess not. Bad sign. Bad sign. So we don't have tests for this yet. So I'm not going to write tests for that right now. Instead, let's... Do we even change anything here? Okay, let's say remove dummy test and confirm brand is accessible from payment token. Yeah, feature test for me is like testing a feature in the application. And an integration test is not... A lot of people say integration test when they're talking about a test that integrates with something. Like if I have a test that touches the database, a lot of people would call that an integration test. I define it a little differently. My integration tests are tests for my integrations. So my credit card gateway is a class that represents my integration with Stripe. So in the integration folder is where I put tests for the credit card gateway that actually integrate with Stripe. So it tests that my integration with Stripe works properly. And the nice thing about putting them in here is that I have that folder excluded from my main PHP unit run. So there's still some errors here, which is just lovely. But that means my test suite runs faster and I can just opt into running those tests when I want to. So we got an undefined index brand, which is fine. We have to go back to this and find out why. So the webhook fails. So we're asking for a valid test token, but we're not passing in a brand. So we can either update that here. I think that's silly because we actually don't care. I think where we want to update that is in the fake credit card gateway. So we have like valid test token, which creates a payment token with valid params with overrides. So we just need to make sure that we pass a brand always by default. And that should get rid of most of those errors. Yeah, gets rid of all of them. Let's add another to-do. Add tests for making charges with the real credit card gateway. Okay, so this is not done yet because we're going to want to kind of do that all together. Save purchase method when purchases are created. I think that's what we just tested, right? So if we look at this test that with no sales tax, the payment method comes back, and then there's some with like sales tax applied. This is a weird thing that I'm thinking about changing, so I'm not going to add assertions about the payment method there. This is the test that's kind of like my real source of truth for purchasing products, so I'm not going to worry about that yet. Okay, save the card last 4. So let's try and do the same thing here. So let's look at where the card last 4's structure is. So it's going to be last 4 in the card object. So here where we have brand, we also want to have a last 4, and we'll just do like the same thing that we had. We'll say card last 4 9876. This is going to fail. Null does not match. Let's go to our checkout payment method. So this will be card last. What do we say? We'll say last 4. It's going to fail because that index is undefined. So then we can go and look at the fake credit card gateway. And where we do this charging here, we can say last 4. It's going to be this token. I'm going to change this to card last 4. And also here. Let's get rid of the numbers. Okay, so don't remember where I am, so I'm going to run a test and find out. Call undefined method payment token card last 4. Okay, cool. Payment token. Let's add a test, or sorry, a card last 4 method. And that's going to get that data here, I think, is the name of the one in Stripe. Yeah. Run the tests. Was that the right thing to do? Yes, it was the right thing to do. Run the test. It's going to fail because of the valid params. Okay, go back to the fake credit card gateway. Go to our valid params method. And add a last 4. Let's use like the Stripe standard ones here. Run the tests. Tests are green. Run the test suite. Test suite is green. I do have shortcuts in Sublime for running tests. So to run just the individual test that my cursor is currently in, I do Option Command T. That runs just that one. If I want to run the whole file, I run just Option T. And then to run my whole suite, I usually bring up my terminal, and then I have a iTerm shortcut, which is Control T, which is just a shortcut for PHP unit. So if I hit Control T, it just like auto types PHP unit and runs it for me. We looked at the webhook dispatcher in a lot of detail in the 2 streams ago. So if you go to my YouTube channel and look back 2 streams, you can see where we look at that. I think the stream is called something like Test Driving Webhook Failures. And that does a lot of work with the webhook dispatcher. So if you look there, you can see how it all works. Anyways, let's go to the migration. Actually, let's commit. Store card last 4 when creating purchases. Where's the create purchases migration? So I think we can get rid of these nullables now. Try one at a time. Nope, not quite. Not null constraint failed. Partially refunding a purchase and refunding a purchase in full. Okay. Refund purchase test. Partially. Okay. So I think this is because integrity constraint purchases payment method. So I think we just need to update the model factory, to be honest. Payment method. Visa. Okay, so that one's safe now, and I think we're going to have a similar error when we do this one, and we'll just have to update that model factory. I'm not even going to read those. I'm quite sure that's the same problem. Run them again. Done. Cool. So I think that's probably it for today. I don't know where I'll be next time. I'm probably going to do a bunch of work offline, but we'll see where I'm at, and hopefully we can tackle something else that's fun. So hopefully you guys are enjoying these streams. Let me know what you think on Twitter. Like, give me feedback somewhere to let me know if you think they're fun and if you learned anything useful, because it helps me know what sort of stuff to keep showing, or how long to make them, or if it's worth anyone's time or whatever. But yeah, any feedback would be appreciated, and hope you're enjoying the streams, and I'll see you on Friday if you're around for another one at the same bat time, same bat channel, 3 p.m. Friday. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.